The people to whom the Hebrew letter was written to was living in a difficult time. We notice in Hebrews chapter 10, beginning in verse 32, we read just how things were not so easy. The Bible says, "But remember the former days, when after being enlightened, you endured a great conflict of sufferings, partly by being made a public spectacle through reproaches and tribulations, and partly by becoming sharers with those who were so treated. For you showed sympathy to the prisoners, and accepted joyfully the seizure of your property, knowing that you have for yourselves a better possession and an abiding one." I want you to consider their attitude here. Their property is being seized because of their faithfulness to God, and they let it go joyfully. That's an interesting idea. As you look in Hebrews chapter 11, beginning in verse 8, we continue to read about the great faith that these people had. By faith, Abraham, when he was called, obeyed by going out to a place which he was to receive for an inheritance, and he went out, not knowing where he was going. By faith, he lived as an alien in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, fellow heirs of the same promise. For he, watch this, for he was looking for the city which has foundations, whose architect and builder is God. By faith, even Sarah herself received ability to conceive, even beyond the proper time of life, since she considered him faithful who had promised. Therefore also there was born of one man, and him as good as dead, at that as many descendants as the stars of heaven number, and innumerable as the sand which is by the seashore. All these died in faith, without receiving the promises, but having seen them and having welcomed them from a distance, and having confessed that they were strangers and exiles on the earth. For those who say such things make it clear that they are seeking a country of their own. And indeed, if they had been thinking of that country from which they went out, they would have had opportunity to return. But as it is, they desire a better country, that is, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. Things weren't all that easy for these folks. Why live in a tent? Why travel around living in a tent? How could these people live such sacrificial lives and by faith with joy, the seizure of their property, let it go? These people lived such lives. Now I want you to watch this. They lived such lives because they looked beyond the immediate. They looked beyond the here and now. They looked for something they knew that was coming. Did you notice some of these phrases he looked for in verse 10? They seek a country, verse 14. They desire a better country, verse 16. There's this looking, and there's this seeking, and there's this anticipating, this desiring of something better that is to come. Such had an effect on how they lived here and now. Such had an effect on their attitudes as they walked on this earth. Oh, we get so caught up in this life. I know I do. These folks truly did what the Apostle Paul encouraged back in Colossians 3, verses 1 and 2, as they set their mind on things above, not on things on this earth. Today, I want to remind you of the reward of the faithful. I want to remind you that as children of God, His sons and His daughters, we have something far better. Let us live today looking for that city, desiring, anticipating, hoping for. Many of the people to whom the Hebrew letter was written realized they didn't have much about this life, about this earth that would remain. But there was something that would remain, that could not be moved. Did you read that verse? Did you remember reading that verse about this city that has foundations? It cannot be moved. We have to look beyond this life to see what remains. Let me close with verse 14 of Hebrews chapter 13. For here we do not have a lasting city, but we are seeking the city which is to come. Today, I'll leave you with this question. What are you looking for? Hope you have a good rest of the day.